Hi, everyone. Welcome to our riveting panel on-chain data. To level set, no financial advice today, but we're going to be covering a lot of exciting topics around market transparency, regulations, and really overall opportunities within on-chain analysis. I'm super excited to be joined by our guest, Ki-Young from CryptoQuant, as well as Miguel from Arkham Intelligence. Kind of want to start with just a brief background on yourselves and your companies and what you do.
Hi, I'm Ki. I'm a software engineer and product manager, derivative trader. CryptoQuant is on-chain data provider for financial institutions and retail investors. We've been around since 2018, focused on flow data, which is based on address labels, and trying to find some actionable insights out of on-chain data.
So I'm Miguel. I'm the CEO of Arkham. We are focused on our vision of de-anonymizing the blockchain. Essentially what that means is we ingest data from a variety of different chains, including Ethereum and Bitcoin, Polygon, Arbitrum, a number of other partners, BNB Chain, Tron. And we essentially do similar things, including address labeling, in order to identify the individuals, companies, funds, exchanges who actually own the blockchain addresses that people are searching on our platform. And then users actually use the data to then either try to find alpha and extract information to improve their trading, or for risk management purposes, to try to understand who owns what sort of actions have they taken in the market previously, and in order to better inform and protect themselves as users.
Yeah, and my name is Josh Han. I'll be moderating today. I'm the head of strategy at Wonderstruck. We are a creative studio focusing on designing and fundraising for the biggest brands like Sui and a lot of the other blockchains that they work with. Want to go kind of into first, your experiences in creating your startups. Both of you guys are experienced entrepreneurs, have both crypto OGs. How did you guys find this opportunity that made you want to start your individual companies and like the overall market opportunity on on-chain data? Miguel, if you want to go first.
Sure. So before this, I worked on a stablecoin. And so, during that experience, you kind of end up learning that your users, all of the extent of the information that you have on them, at least at the time, this was back in 2017 through 2020, you basically only know the Ethereum address that they use. You don't necessarily know as much as you would understand at a Web 2 company, right? So at a Web 2 company, you get a bunch of information via the App Store or the account that is being made on your platform, where you know who the person is, what they're using your app for, and a bunch of information about their demographics. This did not exist, and still to this day does not exist to a very large extent in crypto. If you're a token project, the extent of information that you know is essentially the Ethereum address of your user, and then all of the transaction-related information that Ethereum address has made, which isn't necessarily the most useful thing for building a really big, fast-growing startup. You want to learn as much about your customer so that you can make really great product decisions, essentially. And so my vision was to, using publicly available information that exists natively on blockchains, we would be able to provide much deeper and more granular info on those actual, people who are behind and the owners of those blockchain wallets to, projects, exchanges, and any other kind of market players who were interested in that data.
Got it. Ki-Young, what about yourself?
I was a trader. I worked at a cryptography company as a product manager, and I trade Bitcoin a lot. I made a lot of money, and I lost a lot of money. And then I realized that there's going to be some alpha or data that I can use for my trading. And then I look into on-chain data to figure out supply and demand. When it comes to trading currencies, Forex, if you know supply and demand there, you can beat the market. So I was trying to figure out what's the supply and demand in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I start labeling exchanges, miners, and other entities. And then, I found some meaningful insights there. So that's where I started. I started my company to find some alpha signals there, indicators. But right now, I really think we can aggregate all the data around the world, supply and demand data for commodities, tokenized securities, and others. Imagine you buy orange juice using USDC and Bitcoin in convenience store. You can basically aggregate all the supply and demand across the world for orange juice, and then you can, when you figure out all these supply and demand data, you can build quantitative model for monetary policies. So basically, interest rates and others can be determined by this data. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the commonality I hear from both of you guys is that really you're product-oriented founders that started really building for yourselves, right? And I'm curious, you come from a trading background, more of an entrepreneur within DeFi, stablecoins. But really, what are the type of customers that you guys serve now? And who are you guys providing the most value to today? Guillaume? Yeah.
Me first?
Yeah.
Okay. We've been focused on retail investors since 2018 to 2021. Since last year, we pivoted our business model more focusing to financial institutions, especially in the US, because we realized that our signed-up users was basically 440,000 across all the countries, but now it really diminished, 0.5% was decreased. So we start engaging with financial institutions in the US since last year, and we partner with CME Group. We are the only on-chain data provider for CME Group and its partners. And we are partnered with Moody's Terminal and other traditional terminals. And after that, once we get more presence among financial institutions, they ask us some data for their risk management. So, as well as fundamental data for some narratives. So institutions, they are basically wants to manage their risk for their funds, crypto funds, or ETF funds and other equity funds as well, which is comprises of minor stocks. And secondly, for the fundamental data, like network data, the number of addresses, the hash rate, these type of data, has been used by brokerage services who wants to sell their funds, like sell-side funds or market makers and others. So
yeah, a lot of financial institutions. Is the ideal customer same for you, Miguel?
I think we're still learning a little bit about our business and about the kinds of customers who come in. It's still like a little bit of an exploration for us as we analyze more and more data as we continue to get users. Obviously, CryptoQuant has been around for quite a while now, and so they're more mature in understanding all of these different segments. Presently, however, what I will say is the majority of Arkham's users are retail, sort of by like net amount of users who are using the platform. It's still retail traders. However, something like 20% of our user base is institutional. So I would say maybe 80% retail investor, 20% institutional. And then within the institutions who are using Arkham, I would say the majority are hedge funds, other kinds of quantitative trading firms, market makers, and larger players who are essentially looking to understand more about the market, protect their positions, and these sorts of things. I think oftentimes, for example, people will want to use Arkham to try to understand more about the tokenomics behind a project, right? They want to know more about what the insider supply looks like. Obviously, these things are super important. I think that vision for being able to aggregate supply and demand is incredibly important, and I think super valuable. I think we are like one of the things that's more of a differentiator is I don't think we have as much aggregated data and information as CryptoQuant. But we focus more on kind of like the individual granularity for a particular trader or like portfolio of an investment company or like VC, right? So if there's one particular individual or particular token that you're studying, I think that you can come in and analyze more about that tokenomics, that particular holder, but maybe not necessarily as much in terms of like an aggregated view. And it really just depends on your investing style, which product makes more sense for you.
Got it. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think these guys have almost created a subsect of personas called like on-chain sleuths right now, right? These are Twitter lurkers. These are the guys that are going out there digging in and finding the frauds, the scams. But on the other side, we also have post-mortem people who are looking at your services for things like post hacks, post events. Specifically in Korea right now, like crypto is a very political issue. We have things happening with exchanges. We have things happening with projects, token listings, the whole 9 yards. Curious, what kind of relationships on that side do you guys have with either the Korean government and if not, governments in general?
I can start with this one. So Arkham doesn't have any relationships with governments, including the Korean government. What I will say though is that at least with our platform, basically anybody can just go on it in the same way you can go on Etherscan and just look at the information, right? Like the whole point of these blockchains is that they're incredibly transparent, and so all of that data is publicly available. We're just a tool for people to be able to access that in a more sort of easy way, right? And so the reality is my understanding actually is from looking at a bunch of these like government documents, obviously as unfortunately a lot of these companies went bankrupt or there were crimes committed, fraud, et cetera, there's actually a lot of information about the investigations that go into it after the fact that come out in court filings or public rulings or information that's presented by the government while actually like convicting these companies or investigating them. And I actually think the most popular tool for governments to use to investigate crypto is Etherscan. I think that is like, I think there are more advanced tools that are specifically catered towards the government, such as Chainalysis or an Elliptic. I think those are, they're obviously bespoke solutions specifically for the government use case. But in our case, basically anybody can come on and analyze this data, and that probably includes like government people. But you're totally right in terms of the two different kinds of segments. I think there are the people who are looking to extract information, alpha, and do risk management, but there's definitely also the crowd of people who are basically trying to do postmortems on big failings. Hopefully there will be fewer of them in the future, so hopefully that market decreases. But yes, those are two very kind of big markets for us.
Yeah, we had a business model for Korean investigation government agencies before, back in like 2019. We solved some of the cases, like including Nbombang, Nth Room, one of the biggest sexual child abuse case, and Kim Nam-guk 의원 bribe case and others. But like the problem with Korean government is that they don't share the revenue. I mean, like we can get like a couple of $1,000s per case, but if you see Chainalysis case and others, the IRS, they basically share the revenue, as I know, once they seize the bitcoins. And unlike Arkham has been really great job when it comes to decentralizing on-chain investigation. We're not investigation tool like that much granularity. We aggregate the data and give them some quantitative data sets. So one of our clients are OFTC and SEC and other government agencies. They ask us some data when FTX and Binance FUD was going around. So we gave them proof of reserve data and other proofs. So I think their on-chain solution will be split it into two ways. For one, granular investigation tool like Arkham, and like us, some numbers should be, there's going to be a way to, match these numbers are right or wrong. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm hoping the people that work at these agencies aren't just using Etherscan. I'm sure they want to take advantage of the platforms that you guys have built on. But I think this opens up a lot of interesting conversations around like market transparency and kind of the ethos behind crypto, right? There's the cypherpunk movement around privacy, self-sovereignty, and then kind of what you guys are working on as crypto becomes a bigger market. We need more transparency. We need regulators to come in, and we need accountability within important actors. I think everyone in this audience agrees that we need less FTX, less Luna, less Hadoop Bank, things like that. Do you guys view yourselves and your respective companies as an accountability solution, or more of a neutral kind of solution or tooling capability?
I think for us, the answer is definitely. Blockchains and crypto as a whole has kind of existed in this weird middle ground of the technology and underlying fundamentals being completely transparent and publicly available, but still very hard to find and obfuscated, right? So despite the fact that these blockchains contain all of the relevant information about what exchanges hold what, who made which transaction, who's stealing money, who's losing money, who's making money, net assets, things like this. If you don't know which address belongs to whom and who they owe what to, it's very difficult to actually understand what's going on with these businesses that hold coins, right? And that includes exchanges or Luna or any of these other projects where they are holding billions of dollars, but you have no idea where that money should be going in particular areas. And so, as was mentioned earlier, I think that things like proof of reserves really help. I think it doesn't get you 100% there. We do some of that work naturally via our labeling. Obviously, you can go on our platform and then see how much money people hold, but we don't make any claims that that's all the money that they hold. It's kind of like a bare minimum, and even then, it is us making an attempt to identify all of the people. It may not be necessarily 100% confirmed all the time. We change labels, and we can obviously update based on new information as it comes into the market, just like any other financial tool. But the reality is that it can be really difficult to understand what's going on chain, and so tools like Arkham or CryptoQuant can make it easier and more accessible to get the information that's necessary to understand what a business that has on-chain holdings is actually doing with those holdings. We can't see the liabilities. We don't know how much money they might owe somebody on paper or how much money they owe the customers. But you can, for example, see if a run in the bank is happening, right, based on the withdrawals, for example. So there are a ton of these kinds of use cases, and as a whole, I think we make it more accessible to hold different kinds of protocols or exchanges or kinds of crypto companies accountable. It definitely makes it more accessible. But again, it's just one of the tools in the tool shed to be able to do this.
I agree on Miguel's opinion because what we're doing is not full de-anonymization. We're more like semi-de-anonymization because we find some patterns on-chain data, and then we label some certain entities, or if we don't name a certain entities, but we just name the pattern there. The number of addresses that holds over 10 Bitcoins, for example. So these type of insights and de-anonymization doesn't ruin the privacy for blockchain. So I think, we're good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think we need this accountability solution, right? And a lot of these conversations regarding future scams, frauds are happening in a lot of different places. But where are you guys having these conversations? When you see something suspicious on chain, are these a lot of internal discussions, or how do you bring them to light, right? Because there's only so much that you guys can do as platforms. Just curious, where are these conversations in terms of how do we make sure that the industry becomes more transparent and accountable? Where are these conversations happening?
I think for some entities like exchanges and other regulated entities, they should disclose their not addresses, but the number of reserve balances or users, for example. And then there should be some audit firms like on-chain audit firms that who tries to match their data and its on-chain aggregate matrix. So, for example, Binance and other exchanges, they started to disclose some proof of reserve, but these type of proof of reserve not always like accurate. Sometimes like they skip some numbers there so that they can hide something like some illicit activities. So I think on-chain audit firm should be if young entrepreneur here watching us, you should like start on-chain audit firm, I think.
I think an on-chain audit firm is a pretty good idea for sure. A lot of the discussions definitely happen internally just because there's so much to talk about, right? You've got hundreds of blockchains. Realistically, only a couple of them are actually used and have real activity. But there's millions of transactions happening every day, billions of volume, one would hope. And there's always something interesting going on. Maybe not all of it is shady, but there's definitely stuff to think about and to discuss. And so I think very naturally the majority of the discussions happen within our teams, either between engineers or between analysts, for example. But then when there are certain things that need to be discussed, I would say the main medium by which that can happen is Twitter. Yeah. Like the majority of the time, that is where a lot of the discussions are being had, and where people will, I guess, call out. There's sort of been a culture in crypto of sort of bringing things to light or calling people out and saying, hey, this looks weird. Somebody should explain this. Or, like you said, that culture of on-chain sleuths going around and talking about all of the happenings on-chain. Those are super popular as well. And so I would say a lot of it happens with either within, at least in my case, within our company internally, and then any external discussions are happening via Twitter.
Right. I mean, I hope people to continue to use Twitter as this public forum to have these conversations. But like you said, there's so much data out there, and it's almost kind of, there's a lot of people looking for attention, right? Calling out things. It's almost like the news cycle of like, they just want the headline, and they'll say, X wallet or X exchange is doing this, they're dumping. How do you guys go about when, you guys are working with such big, large data sets? I think has to come to a point where there are moments where things are mislabeled or incorrect information goes out there. What does the process look like when that does happen? And how do you guys either manage the situation or decrease the pain from it?
So in our case, we have hundreds of millions of labels on Arkham, right? And so even if you have a tiny fraction of a percent of a margin of error, in an absolute sense, it's a meaningful number of labels, right? So, even if we get 99.999% of on-chain volume correct, you have to account for the fact that there's like 10 trillion of historical volume that has been traded using blockchains. And so, like I said, it's a lot of money, even if it's a fraction. So we aim to get everything right. Many cases, it can be disputed, right? People can go online and say that your information is incorrect, and I think the process for fixing particular issues is essentially just the inverse of having made the label, right? When we push labels, it's as a result of a combination of two things: information obtained algorithmically, right? So information that is obtained via using our own machine learning and data science tools in order to make the attribution in the first place, and then a group of humans at the end of the day being the backstop to verify that the information is correct or not, right? And so when there's a dispute, which by the way, we have a button on the Arkham platform where users can submit information to, dispute a particular wallet label to us privately, and now we actually have a way to award those disputes. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, most people do not opt to use that button. Instead, they yell at us on Twitter, which is okay because we end up solving it anyway. We then will review that, right? And then a group of people will go and sit down and actually assess that information and see whether or not the dispute is legitimate or if our information is actually holding up, right? And we've even had discussions on Twitter in particular cases where, a bunch of members of the community, maybe didn't necessarily agree with one of the labels that we put out. I think I still hold strong on that. I think ultimately that ended up being verified. But we have these public discussions and potentially even disagreements, and people have to hash it out in a debate format to figure out ultimately what everybody cares about, which is what is the truth about who this wallet belongs to and what is going on.
Yeah. Discussions on Twitter. It really helps to clarify whether the label is the data is right or wrong. For us, our clients, they are traditional finance institutions. If you are work one, you really need the most accurate data when it comes to your building your alpha signals. So we've been trying to make our labels more less false positive, so that we don't mislabel. We don't use our other social crowded labels from other competitors, like Whale Alert, Bit InfoChart and others. So that's why it's a natural selection. That's why quant firms, they chose us over other competitors.
That makes a lot of sense. I do want to go into hard incident response and things like that, but we don't have that much time. Really, when I go to your platforms, I value the visualization of the data, right? But a lot of people, I think, a misconception that they have is I feel like I might dox myself maybe if I go on your platform. Do you want to address people that what is their relationship with public blockchains, as well as what are personal OPSECs that you guys are doing in order to make sure that you're staying well protected on public blockchains?
So I think in general, one of the things that is super important for people to realize as a community is the fact that when you're making cryptocurrency transactions on Ethereum, or when you're making cryptocurrency transactions on Bitcoin, those transactions are broadcast to a decentralized public network, which is available to everybody and is immutable, right? And so in that sense, if everybody begins to educate themselves on what information becomes publicly available when you make a transaction and you generate an address versus not, that's the first step, right, for sure. Then afterwards, you get into stuff like, not reusing addresses, potentially using other sorts of privacy tools, and then naturally, as most people in crypto are very familiar, the sort of exchange black box of the hot wallet being a very interesting way to obfuscate transactions, right? Who necessarily even needs Tornado Cash when you can just deposit onto a centralized exchange and withdraw at the other end, right? So there are a bunch of these sort of tactics in order to preserve one's privacy. It's definitely not a lost cause. I also think that these things can exist together in tandem. I don't think it's necessarily true that if on-chain analytics tools exist, then there can be no privacy. That's definitely not true. You can have privacy tools and you can try to keep yourself private while not necessarily exposing yourself to all of these platforms. But to anybody using Arkham, we don't use any of that information in any way unless it's disclosed on purpose.
We don't dox people as well. We just label regulated entities, and if our clients ask us to label some certain entities, like for example, we do have mining pool labels, but if they ask us can I, clarify, founders wallets of Marathon Digital, which Marathon Digital is listed stock in the US. So in that case, like we do that privately, but not like disclose all the labels to other clients. And personally, I use exchanges, centralized exchanges. Most of exchanges, they utilize hot wallets to process withdrawals. So your privacy, basic low level of privacy will be guaranteed if you create new address and then move your money to your new address using centralized exchanges.
Thank you for the tips. Last question as we close. I love that you guys mentioned, to the entrepreneurs building out there, what you would build today. But if you had to go back in time and talk to yourselves and give yourself advice to a potential entrepreneur in the audience, what do you think you would let them know about coming to a startup, working on on-chain data? Do you guys have any advice for them or words to younger self as we wrap?
It's going to be a lot harder and a lot longer than you think it's going to be.
Yeah, it's a marathon. Don't play the short games, especially in crypto. You will be smashed.
Awesome. Long-term games with long-term partners. Thank you everyone for joining our panel. Thank you to our guests. Please help me thank them.
Thank you.
Thank you.